Hey, how's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Dividend Compounder Show. My name is Amos, and I'm super excited because we finally hit 5,000 subscribers. So soon enough, I'm going to upload my life and investing journey video. And here's a snippet and a preview of it. Before I started doing YouTube full-time, I was a director at one of the biggest pharma companies in the world. And funny enough, it's also a favorite among the Dividend community. Now, during the pandemic, our company reminded us that we were heroes every single day. And on the other side of the spectrum on social media, people were reminding me that I was evil because our vaccine had a microchip in it. What a time to be alive, I'll tell you that. So in this video, I'm going to articulate why I don't invest into pharma companies as a former employee. However, let me back it up and throw this out there. When we think about the best and the most famous investors in the world, what do they like to invest in? What kind of stocks are in their portfolio? Let's look at what they like. So super investors tend to like companies that have a competitive advantage, reliable operations, predictable finances, and are undervalued at the time of their purchase. And the biggest component to their investing recipe is the risk to reward ratio. If the risk to reward ratio is manageable and is in your favor as an investor, the better off it is. Now hear me out. All industries and sectors carry risk, some more than others. With that in mind, I would argue pharmaceuticals carry a ton of risk, which is reason number one as to why I don't invest into big pharma. The Food and Drug Administration has so much power that they can deny the release of a vaccine or a drug despite the fact that you had a rollout plan and factories ready to mass produce that drug. With compelling evidence, of course, the pharma company can push back, but think about it. Every day that the product isn't GTM and rolled out to the public, the pharma company is going to lose money. And when the drug is eventually released on a delayed schedule, like 120 days behind the intended date of release, you also run into the risks of people not reacting to it the way you intended, or for the side effects to hit the major news outlets, which will ultimately manifest as litigation and court battles. It might not be the first year or two, but 10 years down the road, with enough attention and people saying this drug hurt me, and that drug being traced to certain cancers or diseases, it's one of those things where you make a ton of profit up front, and then later on, you gotta deal with the people that suffered because of your product, and consequently, you gotta do settlements to pay off their medical bills and everything else. So there's risks getting the drugs out to the market, and risks even after it is released. Reason number two, there is a lot of uncertainty surrounding the R&D pipeline. What you see on your screen right now is Merck's drug pipeline. Look at how many drugs are currently in phase 2, ranging from cancer drugs to vaccines, and then turn your eyes to this side of the screen and just assess how many made it past the clinical trials. You start off with like 100 in phase 2, and then it boils down to like 25 in phase 3, and in the end, these are the ones that are at the mercy of the FDA. After spending millions of dollars and countless number of resources on developing a new drug, you don't even want to know how many is in phase 1. But for a potential drug to go from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3 and all the way over here, it could still amount to nothing and be a big bust. Because even if the drugs make it to right here in between phase 3 and under regulatory review, which is the clinical trials, it could still be deemed no bueno if it fails to meet the statistics or outcomes that they were looking for. So even after paying for the best scientists in the world, that still isn't enough to guarantee success for a particular drug. It could take 10, 20, even 30 years of trial and error before a drug is actually produced. And when you think about it, the cash flow of a pharmaceutical company depends on the success of these drugs to be published. Yet, the success rate for a drug that makes it to clinical trials, to this stage right here in between phase 3 and regulatory review, is less than 5 or 6%, depending on the year. That means 95% of the time, it's a gamble on the losing side. Can you imagine that sort of business success in any other other industry, with that type of odds, you would want to avoid it at all costs, kind of like buying sushi from a gas station in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas. Unless you don't mind having explosive diarrhea 2 hours later. But, fun fact, I live in Japan. You can go into any one of the convenience stores or gas stations that are located in this island, and you would be okay. And apparently, 7-Eleven in the US is trying to implement and roll out that type of cuisine and food options in the US-based 7-Elevens, because here in Japan, the 7-Elevens are pretty amazing, I'm not gonna lie. Reason number 3 are the patents. We can talk all day about how amazing or how evil pharmaceutical companies are. But the fact of the matter is, a pharma company is going to throw an exclusive patent on a life-saving drug or treatment. And they do this because it's an economic moat against the competition. For a pharma company, their biggest lifeline isn't the lobbyists in Congress, nor the marketing budgets that flood every single YouTube ad or football commercial, but rather, it's the patents that protect their drugs from being produced by their rivals. And what I'm trying to say is that when the patent expires, the pharma company is going to feel that impact on their bottom line. Just to throw an example out there, Pfizer and their cholesterol drug Lipitor, when Pfizer's patent for this expired, their revenue dropped by 60%. What you see on your screen right now is billions of dollars. It went from $9.5 billion to $3.9 billion. And look at the subsequent years. It just goes down even further and just stays flat. And this happens because when generic versions get pumped out by the competition, people are not going to want to pay for the expensive brand name version. What makes this even more concerning is that the big boys of the pharma world rely on a handful of blockbuster drugs for their profits. However, when that patent wears off, they're cooked, as the young kids say these days. Reason number 4 is the pricing dilemma. Drug pricing is a hot topic that the political left and the right, the ugly and the handsome, can agree upon. We're not talking about a PepsiCo's bag of chips or Nike shoes. We're talking about drugs that can sustain or even save a life for someone that needs it. And because pharma companies operate as a profitable business, they mark up the prices. As such, they face backlash from the government, people, insurance companies, and activists all over the world. You know, to be honest, kind of like mosquitoes in the summertime. Every single August, my legs get crushed by those bloodthirsty jerks. And apparently that's because if your blood type is O positive or even O negative, you are the mosquito's favorite variety of human. It kind of sucks. But circling back to the pricing dilemma, did you know as a whole, the pharma industry price gouges American citizens exclusively? The exact same drug is cheaper when they sell it to Canada or to Slovakia or even Turkey. Shout out to Turkey for the cheap hair transplants. And pharmaceutical companies can do this because they have an economic moat and they can adjust their pricing power depending on the regional market. Who's going to tell them you can't do it? Right? However, I think the American people are waking up to the pricing absurdity and monopolistic practices of big pharma. Even in the past 10 years or so, people are pushing back against the price of insulin drugs and other essential medicine. What I'm saying is the government is wasting their time going after Amazon and Google. Imagine with me right now, if drugs and medicine were more affordable to all patients, especially here in the US. Nothing makes my nipples more dry than to hear of people foregoing medicine because they cannot pay for it and they just choose to die instead. That pisses me off beyond belief. All that to say, their pricing model of taking advantage of Americans, I think it's going to be shattered when legislative changes happen. And when that happens, I'm not going to say if, I'm saying when, because I think that time is coming. Their insane margins and free cash flow is going to be affected beyond belief. Remember the example with Pfizer and their cholesterol drug? You can call me crazy, you can call me an idiot, but I truly think this is going to happen sooner than later. Reason number 5, the valuation process is just way too vague. As a value investor and a dividend guy, I like to be able to calculate how much a company is worth before I buy into it. That way I know with a margin of safety baked in, am I getting it for a good deal or not? But Because of the dependence and the role the drug pipeline plays for a pharma company, it's not black and white when it comes to coming up with an intrinsic valuation for the stock. But there's also other factors that cloud the judgment of coming up with that intrinsic valuation, right? You've got things like the success of new drugs being published, that's a losing battle, the litigation risks, politics, dependence on new patients, and the list goes on and on. You can't predict and forecast future cash flow when it comes to pharma companies. Everything is going to be a guessing game. And if you can't calculate a fair price for a company, how are you going to know if it's undervalued? Just because the stock price is down by 20, 30, or 40% compared to like 5 years ago, it does not mean that the company is inherently undervalued. It just means they really don't have any R&D drug pipelines that are ready to go that are going to be a cash cow in the future, and their patents just wore off, and Wall Street understands this. But on the other hand, a business model that is absolutely easy to measure and understand is a REIT known as realty income. Realty income own property, and companies pay realty income to operate their business out of that property. Full disclosure, I am an investor of realty income. It is so easy to understand that you don't even have to put your pants on. You could just watch this video butt-ass naked like you are. And speaking of which, I just made a video talking about realty income. And I really do think that you should watch it because right now they are truly undervalued. And I mean, let's be honest, realty income is a much better idea than that risky stock that you've been flirting with buying into. Don't even entertain it. It's not undervalued. That company that you're thinking about is not. Unless it is. If it is, please write it down in the comments section because I am open-minded to hearing about new companies. But what I am not open-minded about is having one too many drinks in Thailand and making out with a ladyboy named Martin. That's something that I don't want to do. So even if Pfizer is trading for a low trading multiple and they're down by like 60% and they seem undervalued on surface level, I'm still not going to invest into it because I understand the industry, having been a part of it, the regulatory uncertainty, the drug patents business model, and the R&D pipeline all add up to a sector that I would just avoid. On the other hand, I think the pharmaceutical industry, especially the corporate side of it, awesome place to work for, but to invest into, not really my thing. And if you read my YouTube bio, you would see that I worked at 2 different Fortune 20 companies after getting my MBA. So you could probably figure out which pharma company that I used to work for. And despite its reputation, I still would not invest into that company or any pharma stock. How I see it is this. We are picky when it comes to choosing and selecting other high-value things in life, such as a car purchase, a home, or a spouse for marriage. Unless, of course, you're the type of person who's on like your 5th divorce, and I guess you don't really care. But likewise, we should have the same standards when it comes to buying businesses to become an owner of. Not a collector of stocks, but as an owner of businesses. And I say that because I want to ask you this. Why would you buy into a business that has an unpredictable cash flow model? And even as that sentence just rolled off my tongue, please do not be offended because if your favorite stocks are pharma ones, I'm just telling you from my own experience and my own opinions. That said, I think there are plenty of other, better sectors and industries that are available on the stock market. You don't have to invest into big pharma. Nobody is forcing you. And I feel the same way towards other sectors, such as airline companies, car manufacturers, and the Manchester United stock. Yes, what you see on the top left of your screen, it's absolutely wild to me that Manchester United is a publicly traded company and their team still blows. On that note, on the bottom right of your screen, Wrexham, which is a football team based out of Wales owned by 2 Hollywood actors, I would not be surprised if Wrexham becomes publicly traded in the near future as they fight their way back to the Championship League. I'm not going to lie to you, even though they play in the lower English football leagues, they're really entertaining to watch. And even though I personally don't invest into pharma companies, I still think they're crucial and important for society. The work that they're doing matters. They're the reason why a lot of diseases and illnesses have been eradicated and have improved the lives of so many people out here, including your wife's boyfriend. And changing directions real quick, just the other day, I got a love letter that was like 5 pages long from someone who is very angry and very short because of my Intel stock analysis video. I could tell right away that he was a bag holder because he started off the first 2 to 3 sentences just insulting me. And I get it. I know where he's coming from. Because if I'm invested into a company and I'm in the red by like 50% or 60%, I would absolutely be pissed by content, articles, or YouTube videos that do not suggest a screaming buy. But honestly, even though I understand his anger, I would rather be truthful and state my opinions than to just pump every stock like other YouTubers seem to do, or play it safe when it comes to my opinions and commentary. If a YouTube channel loves every single stock somehow, then you gotta question whether or not they have sweaty nipples. And jokes aside, I think it's important to have a definition of what makes a company disgusting or delicious. Otherwise, you won't be able to tell the difference between the two and you'll think everything looks good. For me, I know what looks ugly, and that's Intel. And unfortunately, I have to say that. However, I should pause right there because going forward in the future, I'll try to be more mindful of using strong language so that in case you are an investor of a company I'm about to review, or in this case, a pharmaceutical company investor, that way you don't get upset and your nipples all worked up. And this is not an excuse, but I don't know if it's the military in me or not, but I'm always upfront and to the point about how I feel about things. Yes, absolutely, I can improve in that department. But one thing I refuse to let go of is to be honest. So I'm going to change the way I word things, but I'm still going to be honest. Now, don't get me wrong. A terrible company could have a turnaround story and rebound. Absolutely, that can happen. But statistically speaking, a company that has solid fundamentals, metrics, and numbers, and the market is beating them up has a higher chance of rebounding than a company like Intel whose fundamentals, finances, and metrics are all declining. I'm sorry, that was mean in itself. Maybe I shouldn't have said that part. And I give that example because 3 years ago, I went balls deep into Facebook in 2022 because their balance sheet, cash flow statement, income statement, their economic moat painted a picture that did not align with how Wall Street was treating them. Come to find out, they eventually did rebound and everything ended well because their fundamentals were solid. Now with Intel, on the other hand, if you are honest with yourself, you should be able to answer the question if Intel's fundamentals, finances, and intangibles look good or not. If you look beyond their flaws and turn a blind eye to their declining metrics, then are you truly being honest when you say this is an amazing opportunity and a fantastic business? Come on, be real. But because the possibility of comeback stories are there, I will emphasize both sides of the coin in future uploads. However, do keep in mind that the data and numbers don't lie. No matter if emotions cloud your judgment or my judgment, if the company is plagued by declining metrics, decreasing numbers, and everything is falling apart, then I'm gonna base my opinion off of that. Case in point, I just uploaded a video about Western Union, and in the end, I give my opinion on why I wouldn't touch that company. All that to say, remember to look at companies as objectively as possible. Don't just look at the stock price and think it's undervalued. Remember to look at their finances, the fundamentals, and more importantly, consider their intangibles and their story. Is there a growth in the future? Do not allow your anger or excitement to turn a blind eye to ugly truths in the world of stocks and outside of it. Don't let your emotions guide you towards a bad decision. Anyways, if you like this type of content, feel free to subscribe, and I'll talk to you all next time. Stay safe. I love you. Peace.